Okay, let's go ahead and get rolling, folks. All right, so today's topic, really critical in this market, seller's market to the nth degree. So you've got two options. If you're representing buyers, you have the opportunity to still keep their foot in the door, still keep them interested, and still keep them shopping for additional homes. But still have basically an ace in the hole, something in your hip pocket. If you're representing a seller, you have the opportunity to basically put an insurance policy on your closing date. Okay, maybe not on the date, on the closing in general. Okay, not that that's a serious problem in this market, but the way you do that is through the use of a backup offer. Okay, so first let's answer the question why. National Association of Real Estate says 74% of all contracts that are written actually close. So what does that mean? 26% fall through. You got a better than a 1 in 4 chance of having the opportunity for your backup offer to become the primary. All right. It secures the buyer brokerage agreement. Say, for example, you've got somebody that you haven't signed on a BBA. When you go to prepare that offer, you get them signing a BBA before you prepare the backup offer. Now you've got them, for lack of a better term, locked in, right? So you have that then as a future client, whether it's on this one or the next one. You will earn credibility with your buyer by going the extra step of securing them that backup offer, all right? And side note, you're also helping the listing agent on the other side. We're going to talk more about this here in just a minute. And frankly, backup offers, it's the right thing to do. It's representing your client without any self-interest involved. I mean, the self-interest is you want to get the deal done. This is a great way to do it. It's a little bit of work on your part, above and beyond the norm, but it will pay off in the end. I love that. Sorry, folks, this house is under contract. Can't think of that movie without loving it. All right. So what is a backup offer? First, when are you going to use it? After losing in a multiple offer situation. When you're late to the game and you get your client identifies, hey, what about home 123 Main Street? And you call up the listing agent, it's already under contract. Okay. You can also do it after you've lost in that multiple offer. You're one of 13 bids that they got. The follow-on question with every listing agent when I've lost in a multiple offer situation is your client taking a formal backup offer? Don't just say backup offer, a formal backup offer, okay? Because there's some education that's going to need to take place because a lot of listing agents out there don't know how to handle a backup offer. All right. What the backup offer does for you, it puts your client first in line. Okay. They have the first right of refusal after the primary offer falls through. All right. So they don't have to go through, but they have the first right of refusal. Does that make sense? Okay. A backup offer is a fully executed, signed by all parties purchase and sale agreement with all the associated exhibits. And one of those exhibits is the GAR F604 backup agreement contingency exhibit. All right. So that's what a backup offer is. A fully executed, fully signed agreement with all of the exhibits and includes the backup offer. What a backup offer is not is the top drawer of somebody's desk. All right. It's not a verbal, we'll give you a call when the crap hits the fan. All right. It is not that top drawer. All right. You will, in these situations, you are most likely going to have to educate the listing agent on how to handle your backup offer because it is widely misunderstood and widely underutilized by most listing agents. You agree with me, Casey? Yeah. Huge, huge. All right, the advantages of a backup offer. First off, in your delivery with your client, it's very simple to say, look, are you familiar with the concept of a backup offer? And then you educate them. A backup offer, you can continue to shop for your dream home, but there's a 1 in 4 chance that the home that you just fell in love with that we missed out on, you could potentially still get it, okay? I forgot I was going to open with this, but I can tell you right now, and this is part of my script with my clients, is I can name to you right now about a half a dozen people that are sitting in their brand new home today because we took the time and effort to do a backup offer, including my mother and father, right up in ball ground. We did a formal backup offer, submitted. Ironically enough, the agent never executed it and signed it, and I couldn't get her to do so. But when the time came, I was the first one she called because she had a formal backup offer paper in hand. All right. If you are writing the offer correctly, there is no earnest money due until the backup offer becomes the primary. There's no due diligence or inspections until the backup offer becomes the primary. And the backup offer gives the listing agent kind of creative license to negotiate from a stronger position. I use the words, often a backup offer becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, okay? If you give a backup offer to the listing agent and they get the first hint of difficulty dealing with their primary buyer, say they get a 5-page long amendment to address concerns, you've just given the listing agent the ability to say, look, I've got a super strong backup offer already in the wings. You can go pound sand with your 5 pages of amendment to address concerns. And quite often, that's exactly what happens. And if the buyer's going to be difficult, next thing you know, you're the primary. Your backup becomes the primary. All right? And the quote, the seller is not inclined to agree to a long list of repairs. We have a strong backup offer already in place. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay, what does the backup offer actually look like? If you have written your formal offer, you can simply rehash it, okay? You simply go in, you change the closing date and strike through on the actual closing date because you can't necessarily nail down an exact date because you don't know when you're going to become the primary. And if your folks are getting a mortgage, you still have to have that at least 30 days in there. So it's real easy to go in, do a strike through on the closing date, and initial it 30 days after binding agreement date. All right. If you do the 3 days after you become the binding agreement date, again, earnest money then is not due until after you become the primary. And your due diligence does not start until after you become the primary. Okay? If I didn't mention this, I should mention it now. When you do the formal backup and they sign everything, it is a fully executed, fully documented, signed by everybody with one exception. There is no binding agreement date entered in onto the contract because you're not binding yet. All right? Does that make sense? Okay, we're going to cover more details of that here in just a second. Okay, and then you also include the backup contingency exhibit. There is one field, and I always get this question, well, wait a minute, I don't know the details of the primary offer's binding agreement date or who it's with. You're not going to know. So you do the document, you include it in your entire offer package, and you leave that blank. The seller's agent should fill it in for you when they execute it and return it back. Okay? Yes, sir.
So I've encountered resistance on that particular point where the listing agent or the seller are like super security conscious on their deal, so they don't want to disclose that information and all that sort of stuff. I mean, you just let it kind of fly if they're not willing to do it.
If they're not willing to do it,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, look, it's the same argument as, you know, putting your client's information on the notice for, you know, their address and phone number and email for receiving notice. You know, if one, I'm not going to do anything with this information, but it's required by our GAR document, for crying out loud. Two, I'm not interested in losing my license by reaching out to somebody else's contract or somebody else's client and losing my license over overstepping the bounds and interfering with somebody else's deal. Not going to do it. So, okay. This is the other one. If this agreement has not become primary by X date, then basically the agreement is acknowledged to be terminated. So you kind of got to be a little bit of a diagnostician here and go, okay, if we went under contract today, the primary is probably going to close 30 to 45 days out. So you just put a date in there that roughly correlates with when you think the primary is going to close. It's probably a good rule of thumb. Tom?
What if we get, this is in place and then our buyer finds something else prior to that? What's the best way?
We're going to talk about that in just a second. Cool. You're one step ahead. Good job. All right. Any questions on the backup contingency exhibit? Okay. Here's the trigger. And again, you're going to have to instruct the listing agent. If when the primary falls through, you're to provide a GAR notice indicating that the primary has fallen through and the backup is now the primary. Then the binding agreement date starts upon that notice. Also, clock starts on your earnest money, any and all contingencies, and the closing date. Okay, so if you've put in there 30 days out, then the GAR notice should probably have in there, and the binding and the closing date shall be. Yes, sir.
Is there language to that effect in the backup amendment exhibit that says that they give notice through the GAR form?
That's a good question.
Or like I know that there can be a difference between what's written and what is best practice, and sometimes convincing another agent of what best practice is versus what is written can be challenging. So if it was written in there that they're supposed to give notice, like how notice is supposed to be given, which I'm assuming there probably is.
There theoretically is. Yeah, it might be on the bottom because I couldn't fit the whole thing on the page.
It's in paragraph 5. In the event primary agreement is terminated, seller shall deliver notice.
There you go.
Doesn't say GAR notice.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Assuming it's a GAR contract talking about GAR notice, they would probably mean the GAR notice.
Yeah, I mean, and the notice could be as simple as an email, in which case, if you're the one receiving that email, I would say, hey, can we just formalize it, put it on a GAR notice form?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's when the clicker starts. You can put it on a generic GAR notice form. You could also put it on this one, which is the binding agreement date notification, which then takes all ambiguity out of it altogether. Okay?
Just send that along with the rest of the pack.
Yep.
It's like, hey, just fill this out.
Yeah. Yeah, you certainly can. It's a great idea, actually. I've never done it, but it's certainly, yeah. Wonderful idea. For those of you online, what he said was, when you send the backup offer package, include the GAR notice form or this binding agreement date notification. Okay? And then to your question, Tom, if your client is still out there shopping with this backup offer kind of hanging out there in your hip pocket, theoretically, you've got a due diligence period on both of your contracts, so you can reasonably be confident that you've got an out on one or both of them. But in an imperfect world, theoretically, you could have both of them become binding instantaneously. So, given that, what you should do is if the previously signed offer plus the GAR notice constitutes a complete package, turn it in, begin working the contract as normal. Then when it goes a different way, if the buyer has submitted a backup offer, finds a different home and wants to place an offer, do that. When you do that, you do the notice to withdraw your backup offer. At the minute you go binding on your new substitute house, you want to send the notice to withdraw the backup offer. Okay? So theoretically, you've now, and this is something that you need to take very seriously, and you need to communicate that to your client that you're taking it very seriously, because, hey, the last thing I want to do is obligate you to buy 2 homes at the same time. I actually closed a home yesterday, and the person across the table, the seller, had done exactly that, had literally put in 2 offers simultaneously, ended up buying both homes. That home had been an Airbnb for the last year, and my clients ended up snagging it. But if she'd have done this process, that might have been a totally different story. Okay? Man, that was quick. So, parting thoughts. Don't worry about failures. Worry about the chances you miss when you don't even try. It is not difficult to do a backup offer. It takes, you've already done, in most cases, you've already done an offer. It takes all of 5 additional minutes to add the backup contingency agreement in there, strike through on a couple of dates, resend it out to your client for signature, and send it over. And again, when you do send it over, you are going to have to more than likely educate the listing agent. Okay, this is not just a top drawer offer. Please present this to your client. Ask them to, fully execute it, and basically you keep it in your hip pocket at that point. There's no need to turn it into help desk. It doesn't need to go into broker mint or anything like that until it becomes binding, but it does put your client first in line and give them the first right of refusal. Okay, so you think you can implement this as a good tool?
Yes.
In this market,
To tell if the listing agent basically says, if it falls through, I will present this offer. What is the verbiage to use to help them along and say, I want this to be I want you to present it.
that's a good question. So the question was, what's the verbiage to coach the listing agent into knowing what they need to do? I would say, our license law says that we as listing agents are required to present all offers, whether it's already under contract or not. And that includes backup offers. So request that you present this. If they find it acceptable, great. Fully execute it. Just leave the binding agreement date blank. Send it back to me. And at that point, then it becomes the top drawer offer. It's not a top drawer offer until it's fully executed. Okay?
Send it's the key, right? Just send it.
Yep. Send it. All right.
And this is great strategy when we get into those multiple offers. You don't have to play the bidding game, but if you get in, accepted backup, all the other people are gone.
Yeah. At that point, you've locked them down, and you can eliminate anybody new coming to the table at that point because they have to offer it to you first. Granted, your client doesn't have to accept it when they come back. Let me give you one other coaching tip in terms of dealing with your co-op agent. If you've lost in multiple offers and you're going to submit a backup offer, the question becomes, all right, well, what do I need to, what about my offer that I submitted that didn't become the primary? What would you suggest we change in order for me to submit a viable backup offer? Okay, it's kind of a way of asking them, where do I need to be in order to be competitive? And that's language I've used, is where do we need to be in order to be competitive to give you a backup offer that you can present and fully execute.
The buyer has authorized me to amend the offer to include $5,000 on top of purchase price for you to be a jerk to your current offer.
That's kind of an interesting strategy. Let me know how that works out for you. But that way you're not submitting a backup offer that is completely tone deaf. If you were $20,000 under the winning offer, the backup offer is probably not worth your time doing. But if you talk to the agent and go, hey, look, realize it was a tough bidding situation. I know you had 10 offers, whatever. You want to give me some indication where we fell in there? If I was to submit a formal backup offer, where would we need to be competitive and give you a strong negotiation position with your primary offer? Okay? That's all I got. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.